The wind howled across the empty Montana plains like a wounded animal, rattling the loose shutters of the old ranch house. Emily Harper stood alone on the sagging porch, arms wrapped tight around her thin frame, staring at the horizon as if it might swallow her whole. 27 years old, and she had never felt smaller. The bank letter in her pocket, foreclosure notice, final warning, weighed more than the worn boots on her feet. Her grandfather's ranch, the only home she'd ever known, was slipping through her fingers like dry prairie dust. She whispered to the cold dusk, "I can't do this anymore," and for the first time in weeks, the tears finally came. She thought she was completely alone. Then the roar of a helicopter shattered the silence. Black, sleek, impossibly out of place against the bruised purple sky, it descended like a predator onto the south pasture. Dust exploded upward in a violent swirl. Emily froze, heart slamming against her ribs. No one came here. Not ever. Not since Grandpa died. She stumbled backward, one hand clutching the porch post, the other fumbling for the old rifle that hadn't been fired in 10 years. The blade slowed. The door opened. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out, boots hitting the ground with quiet authority. Even from 50 yards away, she could feel the weight of his stare. He started walking toward her, straight through the dying grass, like the land itself belonged to him. Emily's breath caught. "Who are you?" she called, voice cracking. "This is private property." He didn't answer until he stood at the bottom of the porch steps, close enough for her to see the sharp cut of his jaw and the storm-gray eyes that looked tired. Familiar, somehow, though she was sure they'd never met. "My name is Alexander Cole," he said, voice low, almost gentle. "And I think you've been waiting for me a lot longer than you realize." She lifted the rifle an inch. "Turn around and leave." He glanced at the weapon, then back to her tear-streaked face, and something softened in his expression. "I'm not here to take anything from you, Emily. I'm here to give something back." Her world tilted. "How do you know my name?" He reached slowly into his coat, she tensed, finger trembling on the trigger, and pulled out a yellowed envelope sealed with red wax. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. It was her grandfather's. The first cliffhanger hit her like a punch. The man who could buy the entire state knew her dead grandfather's secrets, and he'd flown through a gathering blizzard to deliver them. Alexander held the letter out. "He wrote this the week before he passed. He made me promise, if things ever got this bad, I'd bring it to you myself." Emily's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the rifle. She took the letter like it might burn her. Inside was a single photograph, her at 8 years old, grinning gap-toothed beside a much younger Alexander Cole, and a note in Grandpa's shaky scrawl. "If you're reading this, little sparrow, the wolves are at the door. Trust the man holding this letter. He's rough around the edges, but he's the only one who ever saw this land the way you and I do. He owes me a debt bigger than money. Let him pay it. Love always, Grandpa." She looked up, stunned. "You knew him?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "I was 22, angry at the world, and he gave me a job when no one else would. Taught me how to work with my hands instead of a checkbook. Saved my life, really." His gaze drifted over the peeling barn, the broken fences. "I promised I'd watch over this place. Over you. I didn't know how bad it had gotten until the bank auction notice hit my desk last week." Emily laughed once, a broken sound. "So the billionaire swoops in to play hero? I don't need pity." "It's not pity," he said fiercely. "It's a debt." The wind picked up. Snowflakes started to fall, early, too early for Montana. Alexander glanced at the sky. "Storms coming in fast. Worse than forecasted. We should get inside." She wanted to tell him to leave again, but her teeth were chattering. Reluctantly, she stepped aside. Inside the dim kitchen, the fire in the wood stove had gone cold hours ago. Alexander took one look at the stack of overdue bills on the table, the empty pantry shelves, and his face went hard. Emily hugged herself, mortified. I sold the cattle last spring. Then the horses. I've been trying to keep the hay fields going alone, but, her voice cracked. I'm not enough. I never was. He turned to her, eyes blazing. That's where you're wrong. Second cliffhanger, that night, as the blizzard screamed around the little house and the power lines snapped, Alexander opened up about the real reason he'd stayed away all these years. He told her about the car accident when he was 25, drunk, reckless, driving too fast on these same icy roads. The girl who didn't survive. How her grandfather was the only one who visited him in jail, who told him guilt is a useless currency unless you spend it making things right. I thought staying away was my punishment, he said quietly, staring into the flames he'd just coaxed back to life. I sent money anonymously every month, thinking that was enough. But I was a coward. Emily's heart ached in a way she didn't expect. She saw the man behind the billions, haunted, lonely, carrying a weight almost as heavy as her own. Days blurred into weeks. The blizzard trapped them for 9 straight days. No cell service, no escape. At first it was tense, 2 strangers circling each other in a 900-square-foot house. She caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, when she fed the last 2 chickens, when she stubbornly tried to shovel the porch with a cracked collarbone she never mentioned. Started. Strange cars following Lily. Phone calls saying they knew his family's every move. Then one rainy night in 2003, Lily and 6-month-old Ava vanished on the way home from the grocery store. The car was found wrecked at the bottom of a cliff. Dental records confirmed Lily. The baby's DNA was inconclusive, but the coroner said it was common with fire damage. Alexander showed her the old newspaper articles on his phone. Billionaire's wife and infant daughter killed in tragic accident. He told her how he stopped living that night. Gave away most of his money to orphanages, that's why the world thought he'd disappeared. Spent 18 years searching quietly, paying private investigators, following dead ends across 3 continents. Until 6 months ago, one investigator noticed something strange. The original crash scene photos showed no baby car seat in the wreckage. And a nurse from the small coastal town hospital remembered a woman bringing in a baby girl with a star necklace the same week, claiming she was found abandoned. Alexander hired geneticists. Paid for discrete DNA collection from foster system records. Waited. The match came back 99.9998%. He didn't believe it at first. Refused to hope again. Then Mia's boyfriend, who worked at one of the charities Alexander funded, mentioned setting up his boss with this sweet girl from the diner who wears a star necklace every single day. Alexander almost cancelled the date out of fear. But he came anyway. Emily listened without interrupting, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. When he finished, silence stretched between them like a canyon. Finally she whispered, all those years. I thought nobody wanted me. Alexander's voice broke again. I wanted you every single day. I just didn't know you were still out there to want. She looked at the necklace in her palm. Mom kept me safe. She must have run. Left me where someone would find me. Alexander nodded. She saved your life. And it cost. Alexander caught her wrists gently. You're not doing this alone anymore. I promised him I'd take care of you. Both of you. He took a shaky breath. I love you, Emily Harper. I think I have since the first time your grandfather showed me that picture of you catching your first fish. I was too broken to admit it then. I'm not anymore. She stared at him, stunned silent. He kissed her forehead, fierce and tender. Stay here. Keep the fire going. I'll get to that auction. How? He smiled for the first time, real, crooked, beautiful. I didn't fly in on a helicopter just for the view. Dawn broke gray and furious. Emily watched from the window as Alexander fought through chest-deep snow to the pasture where the chopper sat under a mountain of white. She saw him dig it out with his bare hands until they bled, saw the pilot limp from the barn where he'd been sleeping. The rotors started. For a heart-stopping moment she thought the ice would win. Then it lifted, wobbling, fighting the wind, but it lifted. She sank to her knees in the snow on the porch, sobbing prayers into the storm. Hours crawled by. No word. The fire burned low. She was packing a backpack with the few things she couldn't bear to lose, Grandpa's hat, the photo, the letter, when she heard it, rotors again, closer. The helicopter landed hard, skidding sideways. Alexander jumped out before it fully stopped, running, stumbling, falling, crawling through the snow until he reached her. In his frozen hand he held a single piece of paper, the deed to Harper Ranch, stamped paid in full, signed over to Emily Rose Harper in perpetuity. She took it with trembling fingers. How? I bought it, he said simply, voice raw from cold and shouting. Then I donated it to a land trust your grandfather helped start 20 years ago. The one that protects family ranches from ever being sold again. It's yours, Emily. Forever. No bank, no billionaire, no one can take it from you. She stared at him, tears freezing on her cheeks. Why would you? Because I love you, he said again, fierce and unafraid this time. And because some things are worth more than money. This land raised you strong and kind and brave. It raised me too, once. I just needed a shy, fragile girl with a broken heart to remind me. Emily laughed through her sobs and threw herself into his arms. He caught her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do exactly that. Spring came slow that year, but it came. You could see them from the ridge some mornings, Emily laughing as she tried to teach Alexander how to shoe a horse properly, Alexander pretending to be terrible at it just to hear that laugh again. The ranch never looked so alive, new calves in the pasture, wildflowers taking over the south field she'd finally been able to seed, a fresh coat of white paint on the old house. And every evening, when the sun bled gold across the mountains, they sat on that same porch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her like she was the most precious thing in his world. Because sometimes the loneliest, most broken moments are just the doorway to the life you were always meant to find. And sometimes the billionaire isn't the hero. Sometimes the hero is the shy girl who never gave up, and the man brave enough to love her exactly as she is. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that second chances come in the middle of blizzards, that love can look like a helicopter in a snowstorm or a paid-off deed in a frozen hand, then please hit that like button, leave a comment telling me your favorite part, and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary love. Turn on notifications, because next week we've got another one that'll make you believe in miracles again. You never know when your storm is about to turn into someone else's sunrise.